Yesterday's sessions were full of some interesting debate and discussion. I'm looking forward to the same today. I would encourage all the moderators though, to try to open it up for participant questions as much as possible,
чтобы они поощряли людей задавать как можно больше вопросов и вовлекали аудиторию в наше обсуждение. Надеюсь, тем не менее, мы будем держаться графика. Вот, сегодня я думал о том, насколько сложным может быть общение и о том, как люди могут неправильно интерпретировать различные знаки, как они могут неправильно прогнозировать и предсказывать события и явления. Вот, сейчас я бы хотел вам рассказать историю про полисмена в Америке, который ехал по дороге на патруле. Он приостановился около дороги и увидел, как очень медленно едет машина, посчитал, что это очень опасно. Машина ехала очень медленно, и он задал вопрос, что происходит, это какое-то безумие. Он включил свет, сирену, и поехал за этой машиной. Скорость этой машины была 10 миль в час. Вот. Водитель за рулем медленно движущейся машины была женщиной, и ее пассажиры тоже были старые женщины. Полисмен был шокирован. Вот. И он спрашивает водителя, что вы делаете? Она говорит, я вроде не ускорялась. И женщина сказала, я держалась в пределах скоростного режима, который указан на указатели на дороге. Там была цифра 10, поэтому я ехала 10 миль в час. Он сказал, это не ограничение скорости. Это номер дороги. Вы едете по дороге номер 10. Вот, женщина была смущена, извинилась, но он ей сказал, ладно, не умеете читать знаки, но я прошу вас, будьте осторожны. Но я также должен задать вопрос. Ваши пассажиры, они выглядят очень напуганными. Вот, а она говорит, не обращайте внимания, просто мы только что съехали с дороги номер 120. Итак, мы начинаем наши сессии. Мы будем обсуждать очень интересный объект, это концепция Евразийского экономического союза, какие уроки можно извлечь из европейского сообщества и кипрский синдром. Я постоянно сам себе говорю, что иногда я могу заменить слово «Европейский союз» на «европейский лук». Почему я употребляю слово «лук»? Потому что оно созвучно в английском языке со словом «союз», и оно вызывает слезы. Примерно то, что сейчас переживает Европейский союз. Итак, я настоящим представляю Оксану Деревянко, модератора сегодняшней первой сессии. Она является редактором бизнес-новостей телеканала Russia Today.
Thank you very much. И большое спасибо за такое прекрасное представление.
Thank you very much for such an excellent presentation of myself. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to welcome you at this morning session of the second working day of the 11th Eurasian Media Forum. Excellent forum. I'm grateful to the organizers for the invitation to attend, and I hereby would like to attend the participants of our panel session. Deputy Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, Mr. Kairat Kelimbetov.
Известный греческий политик, экс-вице-премьер Греции Теодорос Пангалос.
Vice Prime Minister Theodoros Pangalos.
Да, аплодисменты пока не очень бурные, но я надеюсь, что в процессе мы все-таки... Господин Пангалос известен уже своими неоднозначными высказываниями. Я надеюсь, что сегодня мы от него тоже услышим что-нибудь интересное. Директор Института мировой экономики и бизнеса Российского университета дружбы народов господин Масейкин. Политолог, вчера уже очень интересно выступавший, представитель фонда Heritage Foundation, Ариэль Коэн, и мой коллега, обозреватель газеты «Московские новости», эксперт по вопросам Центральной Азии и, естественно, по вопросам Евразийского союза Аркадий Дубнов. Аркадий? Итак, еще раз доброе утро. Наши спикеры уже заняли свои места. Тогда мы, наверное, приступим к работе. Итак, Таможенный союз России, Беларуси и Казахстана постепенно движется в сторону Евразийского экономического союза. В декабре прошлого года президенты этих трех стран поручили своим правительствам к маю месяцу принять план конкретных действий по созданию Евразийского экономического союза. Напомню, между прочим, что май уже буквально через несколько дней у нас. Ну а далее, через год, договор
the month of
должны
May.
быть подписаны договоры о совместных
Soon, three
действиях
countries
и
will
должны
sign
быть подписаны
agreements
взаимные договора.
concerning joint
А в январе
actions and
2015
bilateral
года,
agreements.
воспользуясь
In
словами
January
министра иностранных дел
2015,
Казахстана,
according to the words from the
жители всех трех
Kazakhstan
стран,
Foreign
России,
Affairs
Белоруссии и
Ministry,
Казахстана, должны
citizens
проснуться в
of all
новой
three
реальности
countries must
в
wake up in the new
Евразийском
reality,
экономическом союзе.
the Eurasian
Однако,
Economic
честно говоря,
Union.
находясь здесь, в Казахстане, я не почувствовала особого
However,
оптимизма
when I
по
came to
поводу того, что уже
Kazakhstan,
в
I didn't see a lot of
2015 году
optimism about
бизнес
the fact
будет
that in
работать немножко по другим
2015
правилам.
the businesses
Слишком
will
много
work according to
волнений,
new rules.
вопросов и
There are too many
опасений. А
concerns
нужна ли
and
действительно новая
anxiety.
государственная
Do
структура?
we
Так ли
realistically need a
эффективным
new state
оказывался таможенный
structure? How
союз
effective
и
is the
не
customs
приведут ли
union?
новые формы экономического
Won't the
взаимодействия к
new
тем
forms
проблемам,
of
которые
economic
сейчас, например,
cooperation
испытывает
result
Европейский
in same
Союз?
problems
Ну,
that, for
согласитесь, эти
example, are
опасения не
currently
очень
being
беспочвенны,
experienced
потому
by
что
the
и
European Union?
идея создания Европейского
The
союза
idea
и
of the
Евразийского
creation of the
союза на
European
самом деле
Union and
очень похожи.
Eurasian
Я
Union
вот
are very much
зачту то,
alike.
что вчера я нашла на сайте.
What I
Это
found yesterday
построение
on the
общего внутреннего
internet,
рынка, обеспечение свободной и
the
добросовестной
construction,
конкуренции,
the
сбалансированный
construction
подъем
of
экономики,
the common market,
социальная рыночная экономика.
social market
Задачи
economy.
одни и те же и у
So
Евразийского
basically,
союза, и у
European and
Европейского союза.
Eurasian unions, they stake the same mission and objectives.
Кайрат Ниматович, я бы хотела, чтобы вы
Mr.
начали нашу
Kallenbeck, I would
дискуссию.
like
Вы
you to
являетесь
open
одним
our
из
discussion. You are
идеологов
one of
создания
the
Евразийского
ideologists
союза. Вы
behind the foundation of the
отвечаете,
Eurasian
курируете за
Union.
вопросы интеграции в
You
Казахстане.
supervise the
Скажите, пожалуйста,
integration
если
issues on
посмотреть на
behalf of
официальную статистику
Kazakhstan,
за период
if we take a look at
существования
official
таможенного союза с
statistics
2007
for the whole
года,
period of the existence of
товарооборот
the
трех
custom
стран, внутренний
union, which
товарооборот,
shows that the commodity
увеличился на
turnover
11%.
between three
Скажите, это
countries
именно
increased by
те результаты, которые
11%.
вы ждали, или все-таки как-то
Can you tell
двигается
us
все не
whether
так, как вы
those
планировали?
statistics are the exact results you were anticipating? Thank you very much for giving me the floor and for calling me the ideologist. However, our president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, is the core ideologist of the Eurasian Union, and yesterday he explained the nuances, political, social and economic, behind the foundation of the new union. As to your last question, I must say that compared to 2007, 11% is not a big growth. But we must take into account that years of 2009 and 10 were the periods of acute crisis all over the world, which crisis also affected the CIS, former USSR. So if you compare those statistics to year 2007, 8, 11 and 12, you will probably understand that the growth realistically was not 11 but 20%. So our main objective today is to accelerate the activity regarding the foundation and finalization of the Eurasian Union. All appropriate. So this is some sort of a response of the whole of the post-Soviet Union to all challenges and threats posed by the modern world. In 1994, President Nazarbayev, shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union, communicated the idea that all post-Soviet countries should keep and maintain the old economic ties and connections that were maturing and developing for more than one decade. And he also emphasized that our nations should live close together because we have a lot in common in culture and social spheres. At the time of those events, European Union to us appeared something idealistic, and it was like an icon that we had to follow and conform to. One of the brightest components or elements of that experience was the fact that it took Europeans a very long time to end up in the European Union, while we are taking more accelerated steps towards the Eurasian. So far there's only 3 countries in the future Eurasian Union, and today we see the obvious shortcomings of the European integration. What should we learn from Europeans is their manner of how considerately and accurately they study their own drawbacks and shortcomings, and we're trying to copy that practice in our countries. We studied the European model of integration. In May of this year, in Astana, presidents of the three countries, Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, will discuss the main scopes of activities regarding the further integration. And we will be preparing the draft of the treaty concerning the Eurasian Economic Union. Please be advised that the future agreement will be something like the aggregate, the database of the legislation that was adopted to bring the customs union and the Eurasian Union to life. It will be a big, a very complex, a very complicated set of documents. Documents governing the existence. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelenbekov. I understand that there is a big volume of work upcoming. Many laws must be adopted, many regulations as well, to make Eurasian Union effective. However, I would like to address Mr. Pangalos. Please, Mr. Pangalos, Mr. Kelenbekov said that European Union was some kind of a role model for the creation of the Eurasian Union, and you witnessed the creation of the European Union, and currently Greek, softly speaking, is in a rather miserable condition. So don't you think that willingness to create various economic unions probably is a mistake taken by the government, so maybe there is some kind of sense behind creation of such unions?
Thank you very much.
Я благодарю вас за ваш комментарий, особенно о том, что Греция, мягко говоря, в плачевном состоянии. Очень объективно и точно подмечено. Благодарю вас. То есть еще раз благодарю за то, что вы отметили, что Греция находится в плачевном состоянии. Сейчас нам это очень помогает, но прошу вас не забывать, что Греция что Греция является страной, в которой государственный сектор и частный сектор находятся в очень плохом состоянии. Но опять же, сейчас в мире накапливается новый опыт. До того, как какая-то теоретическая страна столкнется с такими же проблемами, от которых страдает сейчас Греция, например, это проблемы в государственном секторе, то прошу иметь в виду, что все проблемы, источником проблем являются проблемы, связанные с национальной валютой. И в первый раз страна, у которой есть проблемы, не имеет своей собственной национальной валюты. У нас в Греции валютой является евро. Европейский Союз — это группа стран, некоторые из них живут очень хорошо, например, Германия, Нидерланды, Финляндия. Так что нам необходимо изыскать некие способы для того, чтобы общая валюта подразумевала наличие общей экономической политики, общей фискальной политики. То есть это какие-то новые вызовы, которые жизнь ставит перед Европейским Союзом. Если вы разрешите, я бы хотел вам объяснить, что такое Европейский Союз и что не является Европейским Союзом. Европейский Союз является первым опытом в мире, согласно которому различные народы с различными культурными особенностями внесли свой вклад в какой-то общий котел и создали какой-то наднациональный порядок вещей. Вот, сам по себе, по понятиям, я федералист, и со многими положениями Европейского Союза персонально я не согласен. То есть Европейский Союз — это не международная организация. Несмотря на то, что Америка в течение многих лет называла Европейский Союз международной организацией, я бы просил их прекратить использовать подобный термин и реально задуматься о том, что является настоящей природой Европейского Союза. Вот. Сегодня все нации Европейского Союза участвуют в решении каких-то общих проблем. Это не союз правительств или парламентов, или правительств. Европейский Союз — это союз людей, объединившихся для удовлетворения своих каких-то насущих нужд и потребностей. Итак, если вы на вашей территории хотите создать какое-то подобие Евразийского союза, вам следует помнить, что вы противопоставляете самим себе. Я бы хотел сказать вам, вы должны определить, что вам должно нравиться и не нравиться при организации подобной организации. Вот, допустим, когда мы создавали Европейский Союз, то мы закладывали такие сценарии, как повторение Первой или Второй мировых войн и против каких-то насильственных актов. Вот, и мы достигли успеха в том, что обеспечили неповторение подобного. Следующая задача Европейского Союза — это выживание сельского хозяйства, особенно европейского сельского хозяйства в послевоенный период, которое после Второй мировой войны было очень сильно разрушено и попала в зависимость от крупных сельхозпроизводителей за Атлантикой, это Канада и Соединенные Штаты Америки. Сегодня существующие структуры Европейского Союза, особенно в части сельского хозяйства и агропромышленного комплекса, они обеспечивают бизнес-расширение за счет большей доступности рынков и большей активности наднациональных торговых компаний, а также индивидуальных предпринимателей. Вы можете спокойно без паспорта путешествовать из Афин до Стокгольма. Рейсы во все шенгенские страны из Афин, они считаются внутренними рейсами. Это даже не региональные, а внутриевропейские какие-то местные авиакомпании этим занимаются. Я помню, как миссис Меркель сказала, что нам необходимо создать еще больше Европы. Но что значит создать еще больше Европы? Это, соответственно, больше усилий по обеспечению безопасности, чтобы правительства европейских стран приняли какие-то программы стабильности, программы переходного периода, новые программы налогообложения, программы обеспечения трудоустройства для своих населений. Те страны, которые добились успеха, сегодня доминируют в Европейском Союзе. Те, которые не добились каких-то успехов, они не являются доминирующей силой Европейского Союза. Вот. Сегодня действительно в Европе создана атмосфера кризиса. Кипр, который является очень успешной и богатой страной, сейчас также в кризисе, но причина этого совсем другая. Это причина в банковской системе. Завтра Италия также натолкнется на определенные проблемы, очень важные проблемы.
Не очень оптимистично. Спасибо большое, господин Пангалос. Вы знаете, на самом деле, что мне очень понравилось в вашем выступлении, то, что вы обратили внимание на то, что когда страны соединяются, нужно четко учитывать национальные интересы и четко понимать, что нравится в новом союзе, а что нет. Это, наверное, точно так же, как и в семейном союзе. Если не учтены интересы двух сторон полностью, то тогда, в общем-то, настоящего счастья не получится. Рейн, скажите, пожалуйста, а вот при создании Евразийского экономического союза и потом его дальнейшем развитии. Как вы считаете, удастся учесть все национальные интересы всех трех стран?
Знаете, когда я думаю о концепции и о желании создать нечто на территории бывшего Советского Союза, в голову приходят две или три такие крылатые фразы. Одна — это от Виктора Степановича Черномырдина, что не пытались сделать, получается КПСС. Вторая фраза от Гегеля, и это знаменитая триада, что сначала будет тезис, потом антитезис, потом синтез. Это как бы, в отличие от Черномырдина, это благополучный вариант. Тезис — это была Российская империя. Антитезис — это был распад Советского Союза и проблемы, если не сказать хаос. И синтез — это будет нечто, что учтет интересы, сделает все хорошее, но не будет вот этих взаимоотношений доминантности, о которых в случае Европы говорил вице-премьер Пангалос, и которые в случае бывшей Российской империи мы себе тоже представляем. И третий момент — это Карл Маркс, что чуть не сказал, хотели как лучше, получилось, как всегда, что история повторяется один раз как трагедия, второй раз как фарс, чтобы фарс не получился. Вот самое главное — не вредить. Это последняя крылатая фраза, и я на этом остановлюсь. Значит, что реально получается? Создается некая наднациональная структура, в которой у россиян, поскольку они большие и богатые в абсолютных и в относительных цифрах, у них там будет большинство, если я не ошибаюсь, 57%. Место расположения, ну пока что это Москва, я не знаю, удалось вам договориться, что в Астане будет
Have you agreed on having headquarters in Astana? Not yet.
И
Okay.
еще одно наблюдение, что для России Евразийский союз, экономический или какой, он может рассматриваться в отдельности от всех других более глобальных приоритетов. Какие? Это создание России и подведомственной, значит, поляны, как независимого полюса в многополярном мире, о котором еще в 90-е годы начал говорить Евгений Максимович Примаков. Это каким-то образом найти возможности жить рядом с Большим Китаем, как спят рядом со слоном. Отвечаем очень осторожно. И также найти структуры, которые позволяют предотвратить или остановить рост радикального ислама, в том числе и в Центральной Азии и на Северном Кавказе. Для этого нужна какая-то большая структура, в том числе и экономическая. То есть это все рассматривается вместе с ОДКБ, это рассматривается вместе в контексте СНГ, это рассматривается в контексте большой геополитики России. Это инструмент, а не цель с точки зрения Москвы. И последнее. Разговаривая с бизнесменами из регионов различных, в том числе и страны, которые не являются членами Евразийского союза или Таможенного союза, но которые туда тянут, например, с украинцами, уже слышно, что употребляются рычаги давления для того, чтобы этих людей или эти страны заставить вступить в этот союз, в том числе выступление Владимира Владимировича Путина не так давно на коллегии ФСБ, в котором он сказал, что экстремисты, экстремисты, которые будут противостоять евразийской интеграции, вы в ФСБ должны с ними бороться. Я, конечно, не экстремист, со мной бороться не надо, но геополитические геополитические аспекты этого, конечно же, на уме у всех, и для национальных государств, которые уже вступили или будут туда вступать, как вчера говорил президент Назарбаев, для них их национальный интерес, как вы правильно сказали, всегда будут
will always be at the head of the corner. Well, thank you, Ariel. Your point of view is very clear. Kairat, do you agree with the thesis that Eurasian is the tool but not a goal?
Извините за такой, может быть, немножко прямой вопрос.
For being so frank. Well, I would like to clarify here because there are a lot of myths around this, and I want to, since I'm an official representative of the union, it's an economic union that includes 5 countries, and the next stage of integration would be the customs union and common economic ground space. And
Хорошо, мы постараемся не путать.
And since there's a lot of confusion about this and a lot of myths around this union, just like with European integration, we sometimes use this radical approach. Everything is either all good or all bad, and we were so excited to look at the European Union for 20 years, but now we're thinking that they're at the verge of crisis, but this is far from being true, because the building that's being built for about 40 years is very solid. Yes, it does require some renovations, but overall, I think that the European model continues to be a sample model, a role model for us. And despite of all the problems that take place there now, there is still a lot to learn from them and a lot of studies to be done. But we have achieved a common understanding of the fact that it's being done within the overall European competitiveness on the global market. And number 2, to solve the issues of effectiveness and further prosperity of people in this country. So the objective, you asked whether it's a tool or a goal, this is the objective for us, for our states. First, we have to be competitive, and nobody cancel competitiveness on the global market, on the global level. And you see that globally, so many integrations are taking place. And in this sense, creation of the common market, where with the territory and the population of several million of people, this is going to be a benefit for investors, for manufacturers, for the industrial sector. But there's a flip side of the coin. If we look at the competitiveness, you can see that the competitiveness is increasing between businesses within these 3 countries. And yesterday, President Nazarbayev said that Eurasian integration is a branch. It's like a pre-step of us accessing the World Trade Organization. This is a new reality of being in part of WTO, and businesses have not completely realized this reality yet. So what we're doing now within the Eurasian integration is some sort of an adaptation of our states to the global competitiveness. And of course, at the initial stage, there will be some drawbacks, there will be some phobias, including geopolitical ones. But I think that to use another phrase, well-known phrase to what Ariel said, there is a phrase, too little time has lapsed to draw any conclusions. Thank you very much. And by the way, I heard from a lot of people here that too little time has lapsed to draw any specific conclusions. And I heard that from a lot of people. Yuri Nikitovich, could you please tell us, do you think, are there any time frames? Let's say we can say that in 10 years we'll have a clear understanding of benefits of coexistence of these countries. Well, I think evaluation or looking at using this parameter to assess the pace of integration is really difficult, because if you look at the experience of different economic unions that exist today in the world, we see completely different dynamics. We know that the European Union started its operations in 1948, when the first organization, economic cooperation in Europe, was created. In 1951, the first treaty, the Union of Coal and Steel, which was a foundation of this long way. And only in this millennium, the Europe finally announced common currency and this integrated unification. But if you look at other unions and other organizations, ASEAN in 1967 was formed, NAFTA in 1994, and all other organizations later on. But if you look at the history history of those organizations. If you look at the Mercosur in 1991, they signed the agreement in 1995, and this agreement started being implemented. They assumed coordination of all tariff rates and customs systems, and up until now only 80% of those are coordinated and only 50% of those are active. But the organizations just turned 20 years. So I'd like to go back to the statement that, my friends, only 3 years have lapsed, and we're very impatient in evaluating the results. Yes, the results are not very impressive, but please do not forget, as it has already been said here, that 2008, that was the year of the crisis, and our politicians say that we have to have a 30% increase in merchandise turnover by 2013. That was very optimistic because we experienced a decrease in the turnover in 2012, and I think we went back to the level, to pre-crisis level now. And in addition to that, to compare the situation of the customs union with the situation in other economic unions, as I mentioned earlier, the share of internal or domestic trade in the overall goods turnover of the external trade for the customs union is minimal compared to others. Let's look at the European Union. 60% of external trade is within the European Union. NAFTA, 45%. ASEAN is 23%. Mercosur is 18%. And the customs union accounts for only 12 to 13%. So that accounts for only domestic trade, but this is conditioned by the economic struggles of the countries themselves. You cannot talk about the possibility of Kazakhstan being completely oriented towards Russia in its trade, in its businesses. Of course, it's not completely oriented towards Russia, although Russia, in this case, as was noted correctly, is a locomotive of this whole process. 90% of the market is Russia. Nonetheless, today, we can state that the external trade with China, between China and Kazakhstan exceeds trade with Russia. So if we look at Russia, and the orientation towards Russia is not a priority, but once again, I'd like to object, maybe it's not that bad for Russia, because this is how goods from China come into Kazakhstan, and this is how from Kazakhstan they can go to Russian stores, and this is one of the problems that the customs union is experiencing in the moment, and that has to do with the removal of barriers of this kind between the countries, preserving internal differences in taxation, investment policies, and other aspects, which leads to, on one part, to an increase of the cost of internally produced goods within this territory. And it's a simple example. If, for example, in the past, transportation costs were considered international, were not VAT taxable. Now they're VAT taxable. For Kazakhstan, it's about 10 to 15%, which affects the export of Kazakh products on the territory of Russian Federation. Plus, the increase in imports, which is a serious competition for goods produced in Belarus and Kazakhstan in the Russian market. Thank you very much, Arkady. Could you please tell us, we said that customs union so far is too young, but still, what do you think? The tendency is more economic or geopolitical now? This is what skeptics are afraid of. Thank you. To start off, I'd like to once again thank you for inviting me to participate in this wonderful forum, which is becoming more and more interesting and frank, and provides a good platform for discussions where arguments and exchange of experiences sometimes borders political correctness. This is what I respect our speakers for and moderators for. This is very important to be able to say something out. And from this standpoint, I'd like to make a little caveat. I may be on the verge of being politically incorrect correct because I will have to express my own opinion and nobody else's in this case. So the question is very important, the question that you raised. And to illustrate my opinion about this, I'll tell you a story which a lot of people may not know or forgot. In November 2011, when three presidents, Dmitry Medvedev, Lukashenko, and Nazarbayev, met in Kremlin and signed they signed this document, and then Dmitry Medvedev said, we will do it very quickly, we have to, and I will give an order to the Speaker of the Parliament to ratify this document. And the President of Belarus said, yes, I'm going to get home on Saturday, and once I'm in Minsk, I will give an order to ratify this document. And the President Nazarbayev was silent because there was nowhere to give this document for ratification because there was no parliament at that time. And everybody knew that these gestures urgently now did not have anything behind them. Everybody knew that the ratification of this document was possible only if all three countries would ratify it. And one country was not ready to ratify it because of some technical limitations. Why were they in such a rush? Because in a few days, Russian parliamentary elections in Russia were going to take place. And in Moscow, they wanted to show that finally there was this wonderful event that was about to happen. This integration was becoming a reality, and Moscow was becoming a locomotive of the whole process. And prior to that, the President Medvedev, he was the president. I'm sorry for interrupting. We are professionals in the media market, and we know that this news was published, some articles were published, but the work really still continues, maybe a little slower, but it still takes place, of course. It does take place, but we're trying to draw parallels to the European Union and today, and I completely agree with my colleague from Greece who said that the European Union, or with the Vice Prime Minister, Mr. Kalambetov, who said that nonetheless, in spite of the difficulties, the European Union continues to remain the structure that we are looking at, and the experience of which we're studying. And the expansion of the European Union is very rapid. And the rapid expansion over the recent years was one of the reasons of why today the European Union is encountering all these problems in terms of the currency zones, etc. So from this standpoint, I would reiterate that this story with a very serious process of rapid creation and expansion of the customs union is a time bomb in itself, and I think we will remember about this in the future when we start facing specific problems related to this expansion. And at the end of last month, in March, I attended the meeting in Bishkek where we discussed problems of the perspectives of Kyrgyzstan joining the Union. And the first Prime Minister from Moscow came to Kyrgyzstan, and Satybaldiyev was representing Kyrgyzstan. That's the Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan. I was surprised to see how frank the Russian Vice Prime Minister was cautioning Kyrgyz colleagues that they will be having a hard time, an extremely hard time at the initial stage, because the problem is highly structural in terms of expansion, including Kyrgyzstan, and it is prone to cause some social problems. And he warned them to please think about it twice, think about it 3 times before you consider this expansion. But the peculiarity of the situation was that the signals were sent from Moscow for Kyrgyzstan to join the Union. But then, and this is my political incorrectness coming in, I'm sure that the President Atambayev, when he announced that the decision was adopted that Kyrgyzstan would join the Union, it was a politically motivated decision, not an economically motivated decision, because Kyrgyzstan now is not ready for this expansion, for this accession. But you have to say it at some point. But today, Kyrgyzstan is considering is looking at the process of the customs union of the three countries and Kazakhstan's problems related to its activities in the customs union and these problems in terms of tariffs increase and the future tariff increase. And we know that, as an example, I would like to give you this example. The power rates in Kazakhstan are 10 to 15% lower than in Russia. And in the future, Kazakhstan will have to increase internal tariffs or domestic tariffs because they have to be equalized. What does it imply for Kazakhstan itself? This is a very serious problem. So I think this haste that is conditioned by this political decision by 1st of January 2015 that we have to live in the new reality, it is prone to having some problems, and I'm sure that I'm hoping that somebody will be brave enough to raise their hand and say we're in a haste. And President Nazarbayev yesterday said something unexpected, and he was the first one to bring that up, and I was surprised with that. I don't know if you paid attention to this or not, but yesterday Nursultan Nazarbayev said that the process of withdrawal of NATO troops from Afghanistan will not lead to a catastrophe in 2014. So this is the first time on our territory, not Putin, not anybody else, not military leaders ever mentioned this or ever gave this assessment to the situation. Everybody was very alarmed. Oh, catastrophe or Taliban's, etc., etc. In 1996. Somebody said that the Taliban will expand will conquer the lands of Russia to Samara, but I will not get into that. But yesterday was a very interesting session about Afghanistan. There was a statement made that Talibans and Afghans are the people who are oriented at only domestic processes. They're not interested in going abroad. So please do not try to scare us with some false statements. And somebody has to be frank at some point to say the truth, including the fact about expansion of the customs union and including the Eurasian Union, which will have to be created at some point anyway. And
when Deng Xiaoping was asked how he appreciated the experience of the Great French Revolution, he said, "Not so much time has passed for me to be in the position to discuss that revolution." Thank you very much, Mr. Kalimbetov. You probably are aware of the fact that every minute that Arkady was talking, I wanted to ask for your comments. In the second part of his discussion, Arkady expressed certain negativism about the Kazakhstan reality and the operation of the customs union, and that the Kazakh entrepreneurs are not so very much comfortable about the customs union. At the same time, Kazakhstan is actively moving towards the Eurasian Union. Of course, there are some positive moments that were discussed and written about. I want to remind that the customs union and the Eurasian Union are continuously refreshing and renewing legal fields that are offering and commissioning new conditions for our entrepreneurs. In the short term run, we did receive a certain competition in our domestic market, and that competition does motivate our entrepreneurs to improve their business practices. At the same time, we acquired the access to the Russian market without any limitations and barriers. This is the big opportunity, I believe, that was given to us. In connection with that, Kazakhstan people are totally aware of all the benefits of the customs union. So we do realize what we're joining, what potential is presumed there for us, but we must work for those opportunities. That's why yesterday President Nazarbayev said that by the year of 2020, when we end the transition period of the Kazakhstan economy, prior to the membership with the World Trade Organization, so all the protectionism activities taken up today shall no longer be legitimate within the framework of the new customs union and our future membership with the World Trade Organization. So customs union is a challenge, but this is the challenge that offers more opportunities than problems, good opportunities. Thank you very much, Mr. Pangalos. Greek entrepreneurs in the past, when they faced the free competition at the European market, did it help them? Did it help them a lot? Должен сказать, что основные предприниматели в Греции — это судовладельцы, то есть люди, которые оперируют за пределами общего рынка, невзирая на то, что они являются гражданами Греции, они владеют более чем 40% всех морских транспортных средств во всем мире. Так что, то есть реальность, то есть это тоже часть нашей греческой реальности. Какие другие преимущества для маленькой страны предлагает Европейский Союз? Предлагал Европейский Союз на тот момент, когда мы присоединялись, и что он предлагает сегодня? В первую очередь имел место увеличение производственных показателей во всех соседствующих с Грецией государствах. А во-вторых, увеличение промышленного производства, в частности, было очень важно для развития сельского хозяйства, особенно в Греции, поскольку Греция является страной, которая не отличается и никогда не отличалась особыми агропромышленными успехами. Но, тем не менее, в Европейском Союзе у нас появилась возможность экспортировать свои сельскохозяйственные продукты и как-то запозиционировать самих себя на международных сельскохозяйственных рынках. Была создана новая инфраструктура, которая финансировалась общеевропейскими фондами. Вот те уроки, которые мы не извлекли, и это не является в основном греческой проблемой, мы не единственная страна, которая не смогла извлечь урок. Это именно поддержание баланса между расходами народа без ограничений, которые накладываются системой национальных валют. То есть это вот та проблема, которая ранее во всем мире нигде не существовала. То есть такая ситуация, когда национальная валюта не пользовалась надлежащей поддержкой правительственных органов и каких-то национальных валютных фондов. Вот. Также я хотел бы прокомментировать еще один вопрос. Вы задали мне вопрос, можем ли мы иметь экономический союз без политической подоплеки. Я бы сказал, что нет, что люди не могут существовать исключительно в рамках экономики. Люди живут за счет экономики. Бизнес — это очень важный компонент современного мира. Во всем мире побеждает философия свободного рынка и экономики, но политическая мотивация, тем не менее, необходима. Я слышал, когда Аркадий сказал насчет процесса ратификации соответствующих документов, сегодня в Европейском Союзе у нас есть национальные парламенты, которые ратифицируют все изменения и дополнения в надлежащие регулирующие документы ЕС, но никогда не было так, чтобы подобные документы ратифицировали сами простые граждане. То есть не через парламент, а ратификация силами самого народа. Я могу назвать одну страну, это Великобритания, где с самого начала никогда не было страна, в которой никогда большинство не поддерживало идею того, что участие в ЕС будет соответствовать интересам Великобритании. То есть всякий раз, когда поднимался вопрос об участии Великобритании, народ говорил нет.
So the British managed to survive in the Union, ratifying all the changes, all the treaties, through the very strange parliament they have, including one that is composed by lords.
Британцы, они ратифицируют какие-то договоры через своих лордов, через потомственную аристократию. То есть, как вы видите, во всем мире система ратификации и позиционирования себя в различных союзах, она разная. Вот этот дух солидарности и сотрудничества, он таков, что
appreciate your participation in a supernatural system.
Что, если, допустим, большинство граждан не поддерживает идею участия в неком союзе,
you can't make a common entity of losers.
Не будет существовать никакого экономического союза. Это будет сообщество неудачников. Если же такое происходит, то мы наталкиваемся на проблему. Некоторые люди в некоторых странах сегодня 70% населения Европы относятся к Европейскому Союзу скептически из-за налоговых вопросов, из-за некоторых вопросов общего рынка. То есть для решения этой проблемы нам нужна определенная конфронтация, не в том виде, в каком она понималась раньше. Вот, были люди, Шуман во Франции, Аденауэр в Германии, то есть люди, которые собрались, движимые духом, так сказать, объединения, но при этом они все были консерваторы, политические консерваторы. У них перед глазами был пример Советского Союза, сильной коммунистической партии. Во Франции, как вы помните, коммунистическая партия имела очень сильные позиции. 40% итальянской коммунистической партии были сталинисты. В Греции всего лишь несколько лет назад была практически серьезная гражданская война, в которой тоже участвовали коммунистические силы. И одной из причин, побудивших Европу к объединению, была защита от коммунизма, защита парламентских форм управления своими народами. Вот, но при этом Европа находилась под влиянием другой доминирующей силы Соединенных Штатов Америки. Они были наши друзья, но они были слишком большие друзья для Европы. Вот. По мере взросления Америка становилась все больше и больше. Вот. А мы хотели, и несмотря на то, что Америка говорила, что мы все равноправны, мы хотели, чтобы Америка была чуть-чуть менее равноправна.
Ариэль, вы видите, все-таки в идее создания Европейского Союза тоже
you see the idea of the creation of the Eurasian Union was politically driven. I will ask you to comment later, and I see that Mr. Kelembetov wanted to make a couple of comments. Mr. Kelembetov is given the floor. Thank you very much. I heard a couple of things that I have to address properly for elimination of any misunderstanding. For example, when we talk that the domestic trade is small, is relatively small, I agree, because we have to take a look at the structure of our trade and trade relationships, and we will understand that our exports are all based on minerals. Russia and Kazakhstan, both Russian and Kazakh exports are associated with minerals, oil and gas, metals, and our partners in that field are European countries. So when we say that certain trade with a certain country is advancing, then we should understand that this is minerals first of all, and this is our today's economic reality. That is why our leaders and President Nazarbayev think, is a long-term strategy, assigned priority to the diversification of the economy, the encouragement of the processing sector versus encouragement of the minerals extraction sector. For that, we need a common market, because other international markets offer very powerful competition and rivalry. European economy is currently suffering from the competition with the American or Asian economy, and the same is expecting us. We must be prepared. And President Nazarbayev yesterday mentioned about the green economy. Vladimir Putin yesterday said that the innovational approach had no alternatives. That is why, if we talk about the diversification of our industry, Eurasian economic integration shall be based on the diversification of economy and industry. This is the first point. Second point is that each integrational association has some free gaps, including transportation, transit, and logistical gaps. Kazakhstan is positioned between Russia, Belarus. This is some kind of a bridge between Europe and Asia. Yes, and this is totally incomparable to Europe's position, for example. We offer a lot of alternative routes for the delivery of commodities and services, so all the latest initiatives taken and upheld by Kazakhstan recently, railroad connection between China and Europe, Iran, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan. This is our voluptuous appetite to basically integrate through all those activities our region with the rest of the world. To us, the creation of the customs union is another outlet to the global market. And the third point, there was a question what should be done with the countries that wish to join. We have several integration formats, CIS and others. And today we clearly understand that we've done a great size of job within the past 3 years. We accepted, we drafted and accepted a number of regulatory documents that govern customs union. They have been adopted, they have been ratified by national parliaments, and they have been commissioned in practice. It's all reality, it's an operating reality today, but we're moving ahead. This year, according to our calendar action plan, we are supposed to conclude some 50 agreements. So can you see the locomotive of integration is moving ahead? So can you imagine the position of the countries that want to catch up? I totally agree with the speakers who said that there should be the appropriate level of economic development. We must have sustained economy. We must perform the job regarding the construction of infrastructure. For example, customs infrastructure in Kyrgyzstan is a very luxurious exercise. That is why we, on one hand, are very happy that many countries want to join the customs union, and they're currently running consultations. Ukraine is showing active interest towards participation with the customs union. Many countries are striving to enter into agreements in the common free market zone. Countries like Vietnam. There are many countries who realize how tremendous and enormous this market is. In connection with that, of course, sometimes it does acquire the forms of certain suspicion that reasons for the creation of those unions are purely political. But please be advised, and as said by President Nazarbayev yesterday, reasons are totally economical. As to overlaps between European and Eurasian integration, please be advised that we are moving much faster compared to the European progresses in the course of their integration. We have all historic prerequisites such as common cultural space, us, languages that unite us, common historical past and common roots. All that offers a certain element of mutual trust and allows us to resolve many issues in a more accelerated manner. Compared to Europe, at the same time, I must emphasize that when we make fast decisions, it imposes more responsibility on the national bureaucracy, because the bureaucracy will be encouraged to be more considerate in the evaluation of how national interests are properly addressed in such interstate documents. So, given that, we must be fully aware of the fact how profitable or non-profitable is the membership in the organizations of the kind. So, we have to be open and honest, don't we? We have very sincere and very detailed discussions with all the partners. That's why we're moving fast. We never leave any undiscussed issues. The conclusion I would like to make is that we will hasten, but we will do it in a very considerate way. Mr. Kelimbetov, thank you very much. Ariel, Mr. Kelimbetov said that first of all it was economic integration. To my mind, that even if there is something political behind that, there should be nothing problematic about the integration. Well, that's good. Ariel, I didn't expect that from you. Can you explain? So, if that's some kind of system of counterbalances that will curb China, and I think that people who are dealing with the geopolitical architecture of the future union, if they have the consideration like that in their mind, that's very positive, because there are some other countries that are softly speaking have very complicated relations, such as Vietnam, Japan, and India, and plus Russia. They have not so easy relations with China, so the new union will be some sort of a big structure that will balance China, the voluptuously growing China. Even with 170 to 200 million people in the customs union, against 1 billion in China, and 2 trillion GDP, you see statistics, they speak for themselves. Also, I would like to add another very important affair that was first brought up in the European Union, which is
namely the problem of feedback. In Europe, in national governments, there is the parliament which, within the balance between the branches of power, somehow contains the executive power. And the post-Soviet Soviet Union territory, the model is a little different, and the executive power is dominating. The Eurasian Union is being created through three trilateral negotiations of 3 executive powers of Kazakhstan, Russia, and Belarus. So where is the loop of feedback, and how do people who do not participate in these governments, who do not sit in those rooms where everything's being set out, how do they get this information? How do they translate their problems and their interests? And is it possible that what is happening now what is happening now in the European Union will take place? Namely, the top guys really love Brussels and big salaries and the possibilities to settle problems. And the European Parliament does not have authorities that have been earned in tens of years of struggles to be represented, for have people representing the power. And that's why in Europe, not even in Europe, they're talking about the democratic deficit. And I'm sure you've heard about this democratic deficit. And de facto here, we have this system that's being created, which is, let's call it, well, let's not get too personal, but this is the group of post-Soviet leaders, bureaucrats, or maybe some consultants and government officials. As for the democratic deficit, that is going to be a huge question mark, which may lead in the future, as we saw in Greece, to some exacerbations. Mr. Kalambetov, unfortunately, you're the only one official representative from Kazakhstan who can answer this question, so I'd like to respond to this discussion. Accession to WTO and discussions of the legislation regarding the customs union in Kazakhstan and in Russia is taking place with participation of representatives of business and representatives from the parliament. And in essence, at least if we talk about the preparation of the Eurasian Economic Union, we have a double control system. On one hand, we are starting an article-by-article discussion of the treaty, of the Eurasian Economic Treaty, where we discuss how within those executive authorities, how this discussion will take place there. And number two, this document will be prepared by May 1st, 2014, and we give enough time, 6 months, for the parliamentarians to analyze in details this document, and only after that ratify an agreement which should become in effect on the 1st of January 2015. So if you say that only executive power takes part in this, that would be an exaggeration. In reality, all types of power, at least in Kazakhstan and in Russia, that I know for sure, take part, take a very active part in this. And today, all state authorities and all branches of power have already realized this reality and understand that this is one of the most important issues that requires their attention. And since I am an official representative, this statement, the earlier statement, was not politically correct, in my opinion. And once again, integration, Eurasian integration, is an economic integration work. And when we start talking about another level, or geopolitical level, and I can give you a simple example, our countries, Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, were members of CSTO, and we signed this treaty on collective security, but Russia and Kazakhstan at the same time are members of SCO. And within SCO, we welcome this integration and economic thrives, and we're discussing a creation of a SCO development bank creation, a possibility of fund integration programs and projects, and that includes infrastructure. That is why the direction that was discussed here, I think we have to look at it from a different angle, from a different perspective, and it is obvious today that in 2030 or maybe later, or maybe sooner, a Chinese economy will become the #1 economy in the world, and turning your back to this fact is the wrong thing. We have to use it in our economic development, and the whole world does realize that, and investors from all over the world are working with China. They're locating their production facilities, they're transferring their technologies, they're trying to find a niche in their economic development, and I think we should be very serious in considering this as well. Well, thank you very much, because in reality, when you start discussing this issue, especially from the skeptic side, you can hear that economy is driving geopolitical desires. And Arkady, you had some comments about this, or maybe not about something else. Yes, that was a very interesting statement, and the discussion is expanding beyond the customs union and moving towards this big yellow empire. And yesterday was said that we didn't have any representatives, and Chinese representatives in the audience who would reflect on their opinion, but Mr. Kelembetov said that the Chinese economy is growing very rapidly, and by 2030 it will become the dominating economy in the world. As for SCO, I should note here, SCO, in the form that it exists now, has been existing in this form for over 10 years. And we're talking about this organization uniting over half of the population of the world. But today, there is not a single economic project within CSO that would engage Russia and China at the same time. Not one. Not one. Everything that exists today in the economic area from China are bilateral relations with Central Asian countries, or investment projects, large or $1 billion that China invests. And I think about 10, China has already promised $10 billion or $20 billion to Central Asian countries, and they've already invested over $10 billion into oil pipelines and gas pipelines. But there is not a single project between China and Russia. And to me, this is a very serious reality, which we witness now. China, the Chinese economy is a huge... Why don't we have economic projects together? That is clear, right? Russia is not able to compete with China with this regards. And therefore, the power and the financial, economic power and demographic power of China is an overburden, is heading over the whole Central Asian region. And within China, there's some... I spent 5 years in Hong Kong, and I met with my Chinese colleagues there, and I brought a clear understanding from there that within China there is an incredibly large number of problems. I wasn't aware of that, but 600 million Chinese today are officially beyond poverty. 400 million. This is a middle class. Can you imagine how high the tension is within the country to exist today? And the country now has the need to implement, to realize its needs, and the middle class has its own requirements, they have their own demands, and the majority of China is still at the stage that it was many, many years ago. So if these problems, China continues to translate these problems through the border of this customs union, but it will be a big problem for us. So the main problem that makes, and maybe that will seem a contradiction to what I said 20 minutes ago, but nonetheless, strategically, as a long-term perspective, cooperation, economic cooperation on this territory is something that we vitally need, because building customs borders on the border with China is important in order to survive, for our economies to survive. And from this standpoint of view, I do agree, we have to haste, but in a very slow manner and very justifiably, so that we don't have to go make 2 steps back after making 1 step forward. So this cooperation, to my mind, within this customs union or economic union cannot be successful if it only involves Moscow, Astana, or Astana, or Moscow, Bishkek. It has to combine. It has to also unite Astana, Bishkek, and without these friendly relations and trust between these friends in the region, nothing will come out. I'm sorry. I spent more than 20 years observing these attempts of creating this economic cooperation within the region. All of them failed, and maybe due to some personal reasons. But nonetheless, I was really happy to see. I don't know what the President Atambayev and President Nazarbayev agreed on during their last meeting, in Astana, but I think that it's very promising in itself, because I know that the situation is very tense in Kyrgyzstan in terms of perceiving the barriers that exist along the border between Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. For example, meat and poultry products and dairy products of Kyrgyzstan are not allowed in Kazakhstan, which creates a tension within the Kyrgyz socium. And I think that Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan have to be very careful in building their bilateral relations. Otherwise, there will be no perspective in creating this common union in this territory. Well, thank you very much, Arkady. Please, I'd like to turn the floor to the audience as well. So, a couple of questions from the audience, specific questions on the subject that's being discussed. Thank you.
Все работает. У нас все работает.
Everything's working here.
I'd like to address a question to His Excellency Mr. Kalimbetov. Который обсуждал господин Калимбетов. At the AmCham meeting, and the Deputy Secretary of State was making presentation. He was saying that
во время своей презентации говорил, что во время ужина с российским послом в Астане, и посол говорил ему, что на самом деле после создания таможенного союза очень большое количество инвестиций поступило из России, потому что российские бизнесмены думают, что работать в Казахстане гораздо легче. Правильно ли это? Первый вопрос. И второй вопрос, который я хотела затронуть. Я простой человек, я не понимаю вопросы, то есть более глобальные вопросы, стратегические вопросы, как вот те, которые Аркадий с Ирелем обсуждают. Если мы слышим обсуждение этих вопросов касательно того, что Китай уже готов захватить Казахстан завтра, Россию, а Россия готова захватить Казахстан, готовы ли вы к таким заявлениям, в результате которых общественность будет противостоять против вас и противопоставить себя против государства? То есть не делайте, вы видите, что это уже происходит. Вы готовы разбираться с этими серьезными проблемами?
Да, конечно.
Ну, действительно, мы вот немножко
we missed out this issue a little bit, but the thing is that within the customs union that has already been created, direct foreign investments went up about 30 to 40% over this 3 years. Clarifying question, does that have anything to do with the fact that business conditions in Kazakhstan are more favorable than those in Moscow or in Russia? No, what I'm saying is that overall, the overall foreign direct investments in these 3 countries went up. And that has to do with the fact that investors saw better opportunities here. When they make a decision to open an enterprise or a plant here, there is this fact, and that pleases us. As for the statistics, as to what number of Russian enterprises were formed in Kazakhstan, we do have it about over 3,000 enterprises, new enterprises, and part of them prefer the tax regimen that exists in Kazakhstan. Although there are no direct proofs of mass migration of Russian taxpayers to Kazakhstan, it's too early to talk about that. Although I should say one of the main points of one of the main reasons for our competitiveness is this low taxation rates, low tax rates that were created for the business itself, because we're collecting our main taxes from the oil sector, and for the processing, we're giving some opportunities. As for in the preamble of our discussion today, we talked about so-called Russian expansion, and I hear that and I read that in the banking sector is discussing this as a Sberbank of Russia is dominating in the market here, etc. But I can say that assets of Sberbank and the VTB, the 2 Russian banks that are present here, is no more than 6%. Do you call that expansion? I think that we're asking and we're begging our Russian colleagues, large businesses, middle and small businesses, to open joint ventures here and open their businesses here in Kazakhstan. That was another reason for the creation of this union. Yes, the enterprises that existed here before, such as Lukoil and Interel, etc., they continue to exist here to develop their businesses in Kazakhstan, but we're waiting for highly technological enterprises to come to the Kazakhstani market. Today, I'd like to be very cautious in saying, and to answer Mr. Dubnov, his question, as for geopolitical relations, I'd like to reiterate the creation of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was through the creation of this organization, we were able to settle the issue of borders of former Soviet Union countries with China, and the problem that had not been resolved during the Soviet times, and now the safety perimeter and the trust perimeter along the borderline has been established, which to me, from the economic standpoint, indicates to a stable work of our countries. And I would disagree with the statement that we do not have cooperation. We have a lot of projects, oil and gas infrastructure projects in Eastern Europe to Western China. So we're building this route connecting China and Europe on the system of pipelines and swap operations. But we're discussing now very specifically the creation of a common development bank, and through funding we will implement we will participate in implementation of this infrastructural projects. I wouldn't say that geopolitically there are there's some opposition. There are different unions which define the policy of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has a multi-vector external foreign policy, and I think that this flexibility facilitates creation of stability, because all large players are interested in Kazakhstan doing well and being stable. We have time for one more question from the audience, and I think there's somebody in the last row.
2 points. Firstly, I'm the ambassador of South Africa to Kazakhstan, Sirich Soni. South Africa has been part of the oldest customs union in the world, SACUR, Southern African Customs Union. We also discussed in discussions within the SADC countries, Southern African Development Community,
странами Южной Африки аналогичные проблемы, и этот вопрос обсуждался и обсуждается на всем африканском континенте. Это очень важный вопрос, и для нас, я думаю, для нас это путь развиваться дальше. Говоря это, я делаю два заявления. Первое, Евразийскому медиафоруму, пожалуйста, в следующем году, если было бы хорошо пригласить выступающих, то есть участников для того, чтобы обсудить опыт создания Южноафриканского таможенного союза. И второе предложение правительству Казахстана – это провести обсуждение с нашими министерствами, с нашим премьер-министром, с министром финансов этот вопрос, потому что мы очень практично подошли к вопросу распределения доходов, управления схемами мотивации и так далее. И также управление, контроль карго. Мы смогли очень много почерпнуть, и вы можете почерпнуть очень много из нашего опыта. Я думаю, что вот эти два момента помогут нам усилить наши отношения. И президент Нурсултан Назарбаев, и наш президент согласились, что в этом году президент Казахстана посетит с визитом в Южную Африку. В прошлом году президент Назарбаев также пообещал, что Республика Казахстан откроет свои границы для Южной Африки. И я думаю, что поток обмена будет естественным. Что бы я хотел сказать? Те дебаты, которые имели место и вчера, и сегодня, они очень важны. И если мы посмотрим на них с точки зрения нашего опыта, то вот я сижу и слушаю выступления представителей из Казахстана и очень завидую тому, что он говорит. Мы восхищаемся. Что я вчера сказал? Я уже 14 месяцев это повторяю с момента моего прибытия в Казахстан. Президент Нурсултан Назарбаев, он следует шагами Махатма Ганди и Нельсона Мандела. Вам повезло в том, что каждый корабль, который плывет в Казахстане, он у вас как капитан выступает, и у вас министры и премьер-министры очень способные, которые являются инженерами этого корабля. И мы желаем вам успешного путешествия и будем с вами сотрудничать в будущем. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое.
Well, thank you very much. This was not a question, more but a statement.
Thank you very much for your warm words. Given the fact that representatives of South Africa were taking the floor and integration proposal was made, and I think we will love to accept it. And you will expand towards South Africa. Yes, we will. Please be advised that South Africa is also a member of the BRICS group of countries. So when you see the ideology of those countries, such as BRICS, Brazil, China, Russia, totally different geopolitical agenda, but some common interests. Common interest to catch up with more technologically sophisticated states of the world, or another new formation, Malaysia, South Korea, Thailand and others. So as you see, the world tends to move towards the paradigm of economic integration, the sharing of some common economic interests, and nobody should fear Eurasian economic integration, because it will be a pragmatic unification. Yuri, can you explain, can business interests be lost during the discussions about common interests? And this is what I wanted to add to the discussion, to the last discussion. Despite the fact we want it or not, but all decisions are made by politicians. All legal decisions may convey their positive effect in case they are based on economic feasibility. But first, again, I emphasize decisions are made by politicians. There were attempts to mobilize broad masses of population to the process of discussion of some problematic affairs. Somebody said there were no such popular discussions at the level of common people in the European Union when they were drafting the constitution of the European Union, and they couldn't reach the compromise in Lisbon. Something analogous took place in the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union eventually collapsed. So, when it comes to the Eurasian Union, the decision was made by politicians, and we see how many economic problems derive from that decision. So I would appeal to the world that prior to making any political decisions in the accelerated, in a very voluptuous and aggressive manner, first, making decisions should make how to eliminate the problems that cropped out recently. Russian governmental circles recently identified that 50% of the turnover of goods and commodities within the CIS and Customs Union, they are illegal. And those statistics are not always accounted for in the official reports. So the mission is how to ensure the control and supervision over the due implementation of all the regulatory documents. Thank you very much. We have one last question from the audience. Mr. Ruzin, please give the microphone to Mr. Ruzin. Because we're pressed on time.
Я хочу сказать, что, во-первых, напомнить уважаемому Марии Коину, что, находясь на, как он выразился, на подведомственной поляне, как вот более корректно, может быть, стоит высказываться.
Probably Mr. Cohen should be more careful in the formulation of his thoughts.
Сегодня много независимых государств.
Today there are some new independent countries, and all those countries, members of the Customs Union and Common Free Market Zone, are all equal, and they are peer partners. Yes, those decisions were politically motivated. This is the political will we are facing today, but we should shouldn't be afraid of that. Of course, there is a certain extent of anxiety and concerns, as said by the previous speaker. But yes, we have to create the massive support of the decisions made by politicians. All complexities that cropped out in the business sector recently are to many extents are objective. Besides, we must remember a great number of new regulatory documents that emerged in the CIS. This is the objective phenomenon we have to conform to and take account of. Integration. And I would like to refer to the old classical authors who said that integration is the complication, especially at the initial startup phases of the integration. But eventually, complication caused by integration will result in mutual fruitfulness and benefit, common benefit. One of the presidents said that the benefits in the short term were $700 million. Onwards, Mr. Kelembetov was totally correct when he was talking about the common historical platform we have. Yes, this is the geopolitical union. Of course, United States of America would appreciate the existence of just one pole of influence in the world. And I think that Mr. George Bush should not appreciate the creation of a powerful economic unification in the territory of the former Soviet Union. Is it a question, or is it, this is a statement that in the eyes of the rest of the world, this is a very constructive new thing. This is not only economical, but this is also geocultural union of the people. And that's Well, thank you very much, Valerie. I, frankly speaking, didn't hear the question. Most likely it was just a statement. Of course, today in this audience we want to run further discussions because we came here to discuss, to debate, to express our points of view, but we were warned that Mr. Kelembetov was pressed on time today. So, to draw the results of the panel, so I would like our panel speakers to express their point of view very promptly. We would like to start from Mr. Kelembetov. If we discuss that today we were attempted to compare the European experience and the Eurasian tendency of the integration process, probably extremely important it would appear to us to proceed the investigation and research of the European integration practice. There's a lot that the Eurasian Commission could borrow from there, such as proper conditions for the functioning of the business and for the general development of our countries. Economic integration, and I agree, is a challenge to the bureaucracy, and the mission to be performed by the national bureaucracy is to tune the national economic systems according to the new economic union. And besides, as said earlier, we need pretty fast results from the integration. So once more, I would like to confirm our strict compliance to the principles of the economic integration. We believe that that constitutes the platform of our future prosperity. Within the framework of the global competition and economic rivalry, this way does not have alternative. Likewise, anti-crisis activities, it has no alternative. This is the common market. We are currently developing cooperation with Russia and Belarus Ariel, please be prompt.
Я очень надеюсь, что этот проект
Very
будет
much hope that the project will be a success, both economically, geopolitically, but
как тут уже цитировали
cited,
давайте подождем.
as the reference was made to Deng Xiaoping, let's wait, let's get back to the discussions of the matter. Let's probably gain a certain implementation experience for us to be able to judge in 5 to 10 years how it goes on. Thank you very much. Mr. Pangalos, what kind of recommendations, probably some core ideas you could share while being in the center of in the heart of Eurasia?
I think it's an ambitious and important initiative.
Это очень важная и очень амбициозная инициатива. И в конце концов это будет успешным предприятием. Для этого, как мне кажется, необходимо принимать в расчет реалии современного мира. То есть в течение последних 3 десятилетий, каждые 10 лет происходит двойное увеличение экономического роста. Это накладывает определенные новые вопросы, например, сохранение природных богатств и самой природы. Экономический рост в основном связан с появлением 2 новых международных игроков. Это Китай и Индия, которые расположены географически очень близко к Центральной Азии, поэтому необходимо планировать шаги с расчетом, с оглядкой на эти страны. Я считаю, что это очень важный опыт, который наделит страны-участницы и положительным, и негативным опытом. Которая воодушевит эти страны на установление каких-то новых систем внутри общественных, государственных и межгосударственных отношений, как это имело место в Европе, и также еще раз освежит вопрос исторической общности народов-участниц будущего Союза. Опыт Европейского Союза показывает, что имеет место определенный набор политических вопросов, например, стабилизация, то есть таким образом, чтобы все народы, участвующие в каком-то гипотетическом союзе, выравнивали свое экономическое движение в соответствии с какими-то стандартами, с тем, чтобы обеспечить ускоренный переход к общей рыночной экономике. Как мне кажется, что появление каких-то новых образований вызовет прогресс не только в Центральной Азии и России, но и в Америке самой.
Очень внимательно смотрят на опыт Европейского Союза и воспользуются только положительными результатами, негативные какие-то шаги, которые были приняты в Европейском Союзе. Ну что ж, уважаемые коллеги, огромное спасибо вам за участие в нашей дискуссии. Я благодарю всех, кто сегодня был спикером. Я желаю удачи и хорошего рабочего дня сегодня.
Speakers today, and I wish you all successful working day. Thank you very much.